This video is sponsored by Shortform. More on that later. Last year, I devoured around 50 books, which amounted to close to 13,000 pages. I took those hundreds of hours of reading and consolidated it into my top 5 book recommendations for you in this coming year. So my hope is that if it can help me change, hopefully it can do the same for you as well. Starting at the bottom of the stack, we have book number 5, which is Building a Second Brain by Tiago Forte. In case you haven't noticed, we're kind of bombarded with tons and tons of information every single day. It's like loads of information just being thrown at us. We're like getting this knowledge just shoved down our throats, and yet we're starving for wisdom. In his book, Building a Second Brain, he teaches you how to store, catalog, and sort out that information, and to put it away so that you can pull it back out and use it ultimately to further your own goals. If you read this book, Tiago Forte will help you save time, free up mental space, and quite dramatically improve your productivity. After all, he is condensing like 10 years worth of his life experience into a 6 to 7 hour read. And if you like the idea of this, but you're not quite sure and you want a little bit of a taste, I would recommend checking out this video up here that I made on it, where I kind of give a very quick overview / rundown of the first steps in this process of building a system to capture and hold all of this useful information. Did you know that 40 to 50% of your behavior is done without you consciously thinking about it? Isn't that just wild? Like, for better or for worse, your habits control and make up the majority of who you are. As you can imagine, the people that learn to control that 40 to 50% have a profound advantage over the people that remain unaware. And this is where it gets good, because the 4th book on this list is written by James Clear, and it will teach you how to do just that, how to take control and change and mold that 40 to 50% of your behavior that the majority of the population doesn't even think about. This book is called Atomic Habits. James Clear uses his 10+ years of personal expertise and experience to boil down exactly how to create change through your habits. It's clear, concise, easy to understand, and honestly, the sooner you get started with this, the more of the compounding effect it will have in your life. And if you're still kind of thinking like, okay, I know about habits, like they're not that big of a deal, right? I would also encourage you to grab a copy of the book called The Millionaire Next Door. It's not on this list, but in that book, he really illustrates how self-made millionaires have very different habits than the people that are broke. I mean, even going all the way down to like vacations and things like that. Speaking of which, vacations are awesome. I mean, am I right? But here's what's interesting. Have you noticed that when people plan a vacation, oftentimes the very first thing that they plan is where they're going? I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, you have to know where you're going first before you can make plans on what you're gonna do. And yet so many people go through life without ever even really considering where they wanna end up at. They never put a destination in their life GPS, as it were. This sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? And this is where the 3rd book on the list comes into full swing. It's called Living Forward by Michael Hyatt and Daniel Harkavy. And their sole mission is to help the reader, you, figure out where you want to go in life and how to take steps to help you move in that direction. If you invest maybe like 6 or 8 hours into this book and the practices that they have you do, the return on investment is just incredible. For example, you'll be getting around 20 to 30 combined years of experience from these 2 authors, which involves countless hours of research, tons of seminars and interviews all over the world. Like they've heard any question probably that you could possibly think of, they've heard it and they answer it in the book, and they cover everything. And the biggest thing I gained from reading this book and doing the exercises and things was a sense of clarity and confidence. It made the future seem less like the big unknown. And yes, of course, you will never be able to have the perfect plan and figure exactly where you're gonna go in life, because thankfully life is unpredictable. But this book will at least help you get closer, like way closer than if you had no plan at all. Now, usually when someone who I don't know is recommending a bunch of books to me, often what I'll do is I'll look them up on Shortform, which is today's video sponsor. Shortform is like book summaries on steroids. It allows me to get a comprehensive coverage of the book's key ideas very clearly and simply laid out. Then I can decide if I want to invest my time and money in reading the entire book, or if I just want to take those key points and spend that time reading a different book. Currently, I'm reading Stillness is the Key by Ryan Holiday, and I'm learning how journaling has a profound effect on the mind, and why almost every creative or intellectual genius throughout history has kept a journal. They also do more than just book summaries, including added commentaries and analysis. Shortform publishes new book guides every week, and you actually get to vote on which books you want them to cover. To get 5 days of completely free, unlimited access and an additional 20% off of your annual subscription, join Shortform through my special link, shortform.com/Austin, or by clicking the link down in the description. This will give you literally thousands of book guides for about the same price as one book per month. Oh, really quickly, I just want to share with you a really, really effective way to get incredibly stressed. Like, just in case, you're not very good at it and you need a little bit of help. Because there's something that we can do to make our stress levels just absolutely skyrocket. So here it is. All right. Be lonely. Get this, one study found that, and I quote, being deeply lonely seemed to cause as much stress as being punched by a stranger. And now imagine, to my horror, that I realized that my generation, Gen Z, is statistically the loneliest generation to ever exist. How is that even possible? Also, what does this have to do with a book? I'm getting there, but also just the question of how many friends do you have is gradually dropping substantially with each generation. Are we that bad at making friends? Because if we are, or if you're drifting in the lonely sea of loneliness, then please, please, please read this book by Dale Carnegie. It's book number 2. It was almost the number 1 pick from my last year. I read it multiple times, but it's called How to Win Friends and Influence People, because it is so impactful when it comes to relationships and communication, and apparently everything that Gen Z is statistically bad at. And if you read this book, you will learn some really cool things, like what makes people like you, what makes people feel comfortable around you and safe in your friendship. I don't know, that's kind of important. It's also really helpful to know, if you have a hard time making friends, it's a wake-up call when you finally realize oh, so maybe that's why that friend left, and maybe it wasn't actually their fault. Maybe it's something I can control. That's a really empowering feeling. Or another thing is it'll teach you how to make lasting connections with people, and that can actually last a lifetime if you want, obviously. And our world is really, really cutting down on human interaction these days, but there is still a level of interaction that you kind of need to have in order to exist and live. And that's why it's so important to master this ability of communication and learning how that works. Because if you do, you will unlock and open up possibilities that you never would have dreamed of, and that never would have been possible otherwise. And the other thing I thought about is
98% of middle school and high school students, according to a Bloomberg study, said they want to be social media influencers when they grow up.
That's really cool, right? Back it, go for it. But there are certain things that need to happen before you can do that. And I believe this is a huge part of that. Okay, so let's move away from the conversation about loneliest generation and how to get stressed out and all of that fun stuff, because I learned something amazing recently. I learned that if you can change the meaning that you attach to something, you can radically change your life. Let me give you an example. Let's say that I'm walking past 2 of my friends and I hear one of them say, "Austin is such a jerk. I just can't stand listening to him." Okay, first of all, ow, that would hurt a little bit. I would probably feel a little bit betrayed by my friend if I overheard that. But now let's imagine that was only part of the conversation or part of the sentence. And let's back up a little bit. Let's hear the whole sentence. What if instead the whole sentence was something a little bit more like my one friend saying, "Hey, you'll never guess, but I saw the randomest comment on one of Austin's videos, and it said, 'Austin is such a jerk. I just can't stand listening to him.'" I mean, can you believe how rude that is? Okay, so first of all, not a real scenario. Completely made all that up for the sake of this video. But what I'm trying to illustrate with that is, notice how instantly the meaning attached to that statement is changed. And because of that, my response, what I feel, everything changes. And it's this ability to control and change the meaning that we attach to things in life that is so powerful. And so far, the best example I've been able to find of someone living this out and talking about it is by Viktor Frankl in his book called Man's Search for Meaning. And it's the top of my list, hands down. Viktor Frankl says that above all else, we desire for our life or what we are going through to have meaning. And that if we can find an empowering meaning in what is happening, then we can bear unbelievable amounts of pain and suffering. And Viktor Frankl should know, because he was a Jew that lived during World War II. And he wrote the book, I think it was less than 2 weeks after being released or liberated from a concentration camp. And he writes about how he was able to find meaning and help other people find meaning so that they could survive through the horrors of the Holocaust. And Viktor Frankl is a psychologist, I think, or psychiatrist. And so he's viewing his experience and other people's experience through a very different lens than most survivor stories would be. I can't do the book justice in a video like this, just describing it. So all I can say is that it's very sad, very moving, and it'll rock your world.